She was just 12 years old, clutching a cardboard sign that read, "Mr. Reeves, can I sleep in your doghouse?" The crowd froze. Cameras captured every tear, every tremble in her voice. What Keanu Reeves did next wasn't just an answer. It sparked a chain of events that shocked the entire world. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The ballroom lights shimmered across polished floors, catching the gold trim of velvet curtains that framed the stage. Rows of cushioned chairs stretched wall to wall, filled with donors, journalists, and starstruck admirers who had come to hear Keanu Reeves speak at a charity Q&A. The event was elegant, meticulously planned, every detail designed to impress. The audience buzzed with excitement, phones raised, ready to capture a glimpse of the actor whose kindness was as famous as his films. But in one corner of the crowded hall, a girl no one noticed clutched a piece of cardboard that would soon silence them all. Lily Carter was only 12 years old, though her face carried shadows that made her look older. Dirt smudged her cheeks, and her hair clung to her temples in uneven strands that had not felt shampoo in weeks. Her shoes were worn thin, one sole taped together clumsily. The oversized hoodie swallowing her frame once belonged to someone else, stained, torn at the sleeve, and several sizes too big. Beneath its folds, her ribs pressed sharp against her skin, proof of days spent scavenging scraps, too proud to beg, yet too desperate to stop. She stood small against the towering banners of sponsors and flashing stage lights, an invisible shadow until she raised her trembling hands. The cardboard was bent at the edges, ink smeared from where her marker had dragged across the rough surface. The words were scrawled unevenly, shaky letters carrying the weight of her hope and humiliation. It read, "Mr. Reeves, can I sleep in your doghouse? I have nowhere else to go." For a moment, no one noticed. Cameras pointed at the stage, catching Keanu as he leaned into the microphone to answer a reporter's question about resilience and generosity. His voice, calm and thoughtful, carried through the hall. But then a ripple passed through the crowd. A hush. Heads turned, eyes widened. And one by one, conversations faltered as people realized what they were seeing. The sign was simple, almost absurd in its request, but the desperation in Lily's eyes made it impossible to laugh. Her arms shook from holding the cardboard above her head. Her lips trembled, not from the cold, but from fear. Fear that she might be ignored yet again, that her last attempt to be seen would vanish in silence like all the others. She bit her lip until it bled, forcing herself to stand taller even though her knees felt weak. A woman in the second row gasped audibly. A man muttered, "What is this?" Someone further back whispered, "Is this staged?" Others leaned forward, craning their necks for a better look. The murmurs grew, swelling into a mix of curiosity and disbelief. But the girl did not lower her sign. She held it higher, willing herself not to cry, though her chest ached from the effort. Keanu Reeves stopped mid-sentence. His gaze followed the shifting attention of the audience, drawn to the figure standing just beyond the ropes that marked the crowd from the stage. His brow furrowed as he read the words. For a moment, he thought he had misread them. But no, the letters were clear, the plea undeniable. His silence made the crowd quieter still. Every camera turned, flashing in Lily's direction. The spotlight, unplanned and unforgiving, landed squarely on a child who had nothing left to lose. Lily felt the weight of hundreds of eyes pressing down on her. Shame rose in her throat, hot and sharp, but she clung to her mother's memory, the soft voice that had once whispered, "When the world gets dark, find the helpers." That memory was all she had left. And so, with everything inside her screaming to run, she stayed. She stayed because this was her last chance. The room stilled into a strange silence. Even the air seemed to pause, thick with anticipation. The elegant ballroom no longer belonged to the donors or reporters. It belonged to Lily Carter and the desperate plea etched on her cardboard sign. And then Keanu stepped forward. Keanu's shoes clicked softly against the stage as he moved closer to the edge, his eyes fixed on the small figure holding the sign. The crowd watched in stunned silence, the energy in the room shifting from curiosity to unease. The cameras, which had been trained on the celebrity, swung like spotlights toward the girl, magnifying her vulnerability on the enormous screens that hung on either side of the ballroom. Lily flinched when she saw her own reflection projected above the stage. The face staring back at her was hollow-cheeked, dirty, frightened, and so small against the grandeur of the event. She didn't recognize herself. She had been invisible for so long that seeing her suffering made so large, so undeniable, felt unbearable. A lump rose in her throat, and her grip on the cardboard tightened, as if letting it fall would mean losing her last shred of courage. The murmurs grew again. Some audience members looked stricken, tears brimming in their eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to confront the reality intruding upon their carefully curated evening. "This has to be planned," someone whispered. Another voice, sharper, said, "Is this a publicity stunt?" A few people even pulled out their phones to record, eager to capture a scandal rather than a cry for help. But Lily didn't care about them. She focused only on Keanu Reeves, the one person in the room she hoped might listen. He was closer now, crouching slightly at the edge of the stage, lowering himself to her level. The kindness in his eyes was steady, unwavering, even as the crowd pressed forward with their doubts. "What's your name?" His voice carried through the speakers, calm but strong enough to fill the hall. Lily's lips parted, but no sound came. The microphone one of the staff members had thrust into her hand felt like a weight too heavy to lift. She cleared her throat, trying again. Lily." Her voice cracked, thin and small, but the sound of it traveled across the silent ballroom. "Lily Carter." The audience shifted. A girl, just a child. Keanu's gaze softened further. "Lily," he said gently, "can you tell us why you're here?" Her knees trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. Her fingers dug into the edges of her cardboard sign, the ink staining her palms. Every instinct told her to shrink back into the shadows, to run and hide before the judgment crushed her. But the words spilled out anyway, shaky but growing stronger with each breath. I don't have anywhere to go. My mom, she died. My dad, he left. I tried foster care, but they locked me in a closet. I've been sleeping under bridges, behind dumpsters. I've been invisible for so long and Her voice broke. She wiped her eyes roughly with her sleeve. "I just need somewhere safe to sleep, just for one night, that's all." The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of her words pressed on every heart in the room. The glittering chandeliers, the catered tables, the elegance of the event, all of it seemed absurd in the face of a child begging for a doghouse to call home. Keanu's jaw tightened. His expression was not one of pity, but of quiet anger, not at her, but at a world that had failed her so completely. He stepped fully off the stage, his black suit brushing against the velvet curtain as he descended the steps. Security shifted uneasily, unsure whether to intervene, but his hand motioned them back. He walked straight toward Lily. Each step Keanu took toward her seemed to stretch forever. The audience held its breath, every pair of eyes glued to the sight of the star descending from his platform to meet a forgotten child. His polished shoes contrasted with the scuffed tile where Lily stood, her sneakers worn down to threads. He stopped just a few feet from her, close enough that she could see the faint lines of worry etched into his face. "Lily," he said softly, not through the booming speakers now, but directly to her. His voice was steady, grounded, the kind of voice that could anchor a storm. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." The words nearly undid her. For weeks, she had braced herself against cold nights, hunger, and indifference. To hear someone speak to her with gentleness was almost unbearable. Her arm shook, and the cardboard slipped a little in her hands. She hugged it tighter, as though it were the only shield she had left. From the crowd came a sudden clap, then another, hesitant, but real. A woman in the front row stood, applauding through tears. Soon others followed, their hands striking together in a rhythm that filled the hall. Yet not everyone joined. Some remained seated, arms crossed, faces skeptical. The division was clear pity and compassion on one side, cynicism on the other. Lily's cheeks burned. She wasn't sure which was worse, their doubt or their pity. But Keanu never looked away from her. His focus was absolute, as though the rest of the world had fallen silent. He crouched lower, his dark eyes level with hers. "You said you've been sleeping under bridges," he murmured. "And you asked if you could sleep in my doghouse." "Why a doghouse, Lily?" Her throat ached, but she forced the words out. "Because it's more than I have now. Because it would be warm and safe. And because I thought maybe you'd care enough to let me." Her voice cracked on the last word, spilling raw and unguarded into the microphone still clutched in her trembling hand. The sound reverberated across the room, echoing through chandeliers and glass, piercing every listener. A hush followed so heavy it felt as though the building itself held its breath. Keanu nodded slowly, his expression unreadable but fierce with quiet conviction. "You deserve more than a doghouse," he said at last, his voice carrying without need of the microphone. "You deserve a home." The sentence fell like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the entire hall. Reporters lowered their cameras, overcome. Donors wiped their eyes. Security, once tense, softened at the sight of the star kneeling beside a girl no one else had seen. And Lily, for the first time in months, felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Fragile, flickering, but alive. In that instant, it no longer mattered what the skeptics whispered. What mattered was that Keanu Reeves had stepped down from his stage to meet her where she was. And nothing would ever be the same again. The room had gone so silent that Lily could hear the faint hum of the stage lights above her. Keanu stayed crouched at the edge, his gaze steady, his body language unthreatening. He wasn't a superstar towering above her anymore. He was simply a man, bending low enough for a child to meet his eyes. "Lily," he said again, his tone soft but firm. "Tell me what's been happening. Don't be afraid. You have my full attention." Her throat tightened. Speaking felt impossible, with so many faces staring at her, their expressions a mixture of pity, curiosity, and doubt. She clutched the microphone closer to her chest, as though it could shield her from their judgment. For a moment, the urge to run surged through her legs. But then she remembered the way Keanu had looked at her steady, not mocking, not dismissive. Someone was listening. Someone important enough that maybe, just maybe, this time she would not be invisible. "I don't," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. She swallowed hard and tried again. "I don't have a home." The words seemed to echo across the hall. The audience leaned forward instinctively, drawn by the fragility of her confession. Keanu nodded slowly, encouraging without pressure. "My mom." Her voice broke on the word. She blinked rapidly, forcing back tears. "My mom died last year. She got sick, and she was all I had. After that, my dad tried, but he couldn't. He couldn't handle it. He left." Gasps rippled through the hall. A few people pressed hands to their mouths. On the screens, Lily's face filled with pain too raw to disguise. She gripped the cardboard sign tighter with her other hand, the edges digging into her skin. "I went into foster care after that, but it wasn't safe. They kept me in a closet, said there wasn't room for me. They didn't hit me, but they didn't care either. I was just nothing." The ballroom shifted uneasily. Some people looked away, unable to meet the child's honesty. Others stared harder, unwilling to look away from the truth, now that it had been spoken aloud. Keanu's eyes darkened, his jaw clenched, but his voice, when it came, was gentle. "How long have you been on your own, Lily?" She bit her lip. "Weeks. Maybe more. I don't know anymore. I sleep wherever I can. Behind buildings. Under bridges. Sometimes I find food at a church, or when someone leaves something out. But most nights, I'm just cold. I'm tired of being so cold." Her body shook as the words tumbled out, years of fear compressed into a few sentences. She looked down, ashamed, but then forced herself to look back up at him. "That's why I wrote this sign. I thought, if I asked for something so small, something silly even, maybe you'd say yes. Even a doghouse would be more than what I have now." Tears shimmered in the eyes of strangers. The audience, dressed in suits and gowns, had no answers, no excuses. The silence that followed was heavier than applause, heavier than noise. It was the weight of an entire room, reckoning with a child's desperation. Keanu leaned closer, his hands resting on his knees, his voice barely above a murmur, but carried by the microphone into every corner of the hall. "You don't need to hide in a doghouse, Lily. You deserve far more than that. And I promise you, right here, in front of everyone, that you will not walk away from this place the way you came in." The room erupted not in cheers but in sobs, sniffles, and the rustling sound of hundreds of people shifting in their seats, shaken to their core. The spotlight above the stage illuminated them both, now Keanu, crouched at eye level, and Lily, clutching her cardboard plea like a lifeline. The world beyond the ballroom seemed to vanish. There was only the child who had finally found her voice, and the man who refused to let her be silenced. Lily's lips trembled as she spoke again. "I just need somewhere safe, just for one night. Somewhere with a roof, somewhere where nobody yells at me or locks me away. That's all." Her voice cracked, carrying through the speakers. The sentence was simple, but it carried the force of a storm. Grown men in the audience shifted uncomfortably, their throats tight. Women dabbed at their eyes with tissues, unable to hold back the emotion. Even the reporters, trained to remain detached, lowered their cameras for a moment, moved beyond words. Keanu stayed silent, letting her words breathe, refusing to rush her. His silence wasn't empty, it was steady, a safe space for her pain. Lily's shoulders slumped. For weeks, she had rehearsed what she might say if someone ever noticed her. She had practiced the lines in whispers under bridges, telling the shadows of alleyways. Yet now that the moment had come, it felt so fragile she feared it would collapse. She dropped her gaze to the floor. The murmurs began again in the crowd. "This can't be real. Poor kid. Where are the authorities?" Each voice cut at her like a blade. But then, Keanu leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear, though the microphone still caught the sincerity in every word. "You're not invisible anymore." Lily's eyes snapped back to his. The crowd faded. Her breath hitched. Keanu straightened slightly and looked out at the audience. His voice carried now with unmistakable weight. "This is not a stunt. This is not a performance. This is a child asking for help. And if one child is forced to beg for shelter in front of strangers, then we all need to ask ourselves why." The words hung heavy. The grandeur of the event suddenly felt hollow, exposed for what it was, a room full of privilege confronted with a reality they could no longer ignore. Keanu turned back to Lily, his voice soft again, almost fatherly. "Lily, I want you to do something for me. Will you wait for me after this? Just wait. Don't leave. Because I promise you, I will not walk out of this building and leave you behind." The promise, spoken with deliberate clarity, thundered through the room louder than any applause. People gasped, others clutched at their chests. The words weren't rehearsed, weren't polished. They were raw, unfiltered, and binding. Lily's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Relief coursed through her veins so swiftly it left her dizzy. For the first time in months, she felt the faintest glimmer of safety. She nodded, whispering into the microphone she still clutched. "Yes, I'll wait." The audience had no applause ready, no practiced reaction. They sat in stunned silence, witnessing a moment they knew would not leave them unchanged. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Hundreds of eyes fixed on the fragile figure of a 12-year-old girl clutching her battered cardboard sign, the bold letters scrawled in. Shaky handwriting were no longer just words. They had become a mirror reflecting the failure of every system meant to protect her. A cough broke the stillness somewhere in the back of the room. Then another murmur, uneasy and restless, rippled through the audience. Some looked down at their shoes, ashamed to meet the child's gaze. Others stared at Keanu, as if he alone now held the responsibility of an entire world that had turned away. Lily's small hands tightened on the cardboard. "Please," she whispered, her voice so soft that the microphone barely caught it. "I can't go back to the shelter. They locked me in closets when I cried. They told me I was too much trouble. I just want somewhere safe. Even if it's small. Even if it's just a doghouse in your yard. I'd be happy with that." Her words struck like lightning. The innocence of her request made it all the more devastating. She was not asking for luxury, not even for comfort, only for the smallest scrap of safety, a place where nightmares could not reach her. Keanu's jaw tightened. He reached out, placing a hand gently over hers. His touch was careful, almost reverent, as though the cardboard sign she clung to was a sacred relic of survival. He looked straight into her eyes, steady and unflinching. "You will never have to beg for a doghouse again," he said firmly. His voice carried through the ballroom, echoing against the walls, with a weight that silenced even the softest whisper. "Not while I am standing here. Not while the world is listening." Gasps swept the room. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped. Reporters scrambled to refocus their cameras, desperate to capture the moment. The audience sat frozen, as if they were witnessing history unfold before them. Lily's throat burned with emotion. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the bright lights overhead. She searched his face for any sign of doubt, any chance that he might break his word, but she found none. What she saw was conviction, raw and immovable. "I'll wait," she whispered again, her voice breaking, but steadier now. "I'll wait for you." Keanu gave a single nod, as if sealing an unspoken contract. Then it settled. "Tonight, you are not alone. Tonight, the world will see what happens when we stop turning away." The audience still did not clap. Applause felt too small, too hollow for what they had just witnessed. Instead, they sat in reverent silence, the weight of Lily's plea pressing into their hearts. The silence itself became its own form of tribute, heavy with grief, hope, and the first sparks of change. The ballroom dissolved behind her as a pair of security guards gently guided Lily through a side door. The clamor of the audience, the bright stage lights, the sea of cameras, it all faded into the muffled hum of the backstage corridor. Her cardboard sign, bent at the edges, was still clutched tightly to her chest. She held it as though letting go would mean erasing the only proof that her cry had been heard. The guards said nothing harsh, nothing unkind. They were men used to dealing with rowdy crowds, not fragile children. One of them, tall with kind eyes, opened a door to a lounge. "You can wait in here until Mr. Reeves comes," he said softly. Lily hesitated on the threshold, her body stiff with distrust. But then the smell hit her: warm bread, fresh fruit, something sweet. Her empty stomach growled so loudly she flushed with embarrassment. The lounge was quiet, its walls lined with framed photographs of past charity events. A table at the center held sandwiches neatly stacked on platters, bowls of apples and bananas, pitchers of water and juice. Lily's legs wavered beneath her, as the scent wrapped around her like a cruel reminder of all she hadn't had. She didn't ask permission. Her body moved before her mind could protest. She reached for a sandwich, hands trembling, and took a ravenous bite. The bread was soft, the meat salty, the cheese melting on her tongue. She chewed so quickly she nearly choked. Another bite, another, until half the sandwich was gone in seconds. She glanced up nervously, expecting reprimand, but the guards only turned discreetly away, giving her privacy. A banana followed, then a paper cup of apple juice. The cold sweetness spread across her dry throat, making her eyes water. She hadn't realized until that moment just how parched she had been. The food filled her belly, but more than that, it soothed something inside her soul, the ache of being unseen, unfed, unwanted. When she finally slowed, she noticed her hands shaking. It wasn't just hunger anymore, it was fear. She licked her lips and set the empty cup down. The room was too quiet now. The hum of the distant ballroom too far away to anchor her. Her eyes darted to the door. Would he really come? The question pressed against her like a weight. People had promised things before. Foster parents had promised love, only to slam doors. Caseworkers had promised stability, only to shuffle her again and again. Her father had promised to return and then disappeared into the shadows of addiction. Promises had been her undoing, one after another. Lily reached into the pocket of her worn jacket and pulled out a crumpled photograph. The edges were bent, the image faded, but her mother's face still looked back at her smiling, soft-eyed, the kind of smile that made you believe the world could be gentle. Lily touched the photo with reverence. "I think I found a helper, Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The words trembled with hope, yet cracked with doubt. Her chest tightened. But what if he doesn't come? What if it's just another lie? Her eyes filled with tears as she clutched the photograph to her chest. She rocked slightly on the chair, caught between the fragile thread of hope and the sharp sting of past betrayals. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Every second stretched into eternity. Would Keanu Reeves keep his word? Or would this night become another wound, another broken promise to carry? The lounge grew colder as the minutes dragged on. Lily sat with her knees pulled to her chest, her arms wrapped tightly around them as though she could make herself invisible. The food in her stomach had quieted the hunger, but it couldn't silence the gnawing fear. She stared at the clock, each tick echoing like a hammer inside her head. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. Her mind twisted with questions. What if Keanu Reeves had only said those words because cameras were watching? Show, just another empty promise to look good in front of the world? She imagined the stage still buzzing with chatter, people praising him for his compassion while she was forgotten in this quiet room. Her throat burned. She'd been here before. Foster homes where she was told she'd be safe, only to be shuffled again because someone changed their mind. Nights when her father said he'd be back in an hour, but never returned. Each broken promise had cut deeper than hunger or cold ever could. She rubbed her thumb over the photo of her mother again, tracing the outline of her smile. Her mother had never lied to her, not once. Even in the hospital, when the illness had taken her voice to a whisper, she had been honest. "Things will be hard, Lily," she had said, breath shallow but steady. "But there will always be helpers. You just have to find them." Lily swallowed hard. "What if the helpers aren't real, Mom?" she whispered. "What if it's just stories people tell so kids don't give up?" The silence gave no answer. The hum of the fluorescent light above buzzed like an impatient reminder that hope was foolish. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, angry at herself for crying. She had learned on the streets that tears were dangerous. Tears made you weak. Tears made people see you as easy to ignore. But no matter how tightly she clenched her jaw, they slid down her cheeks anyway. Her gaze shifted to the door again. She imagined him walking in tall, calm, the kind of presence that quieted a storm. But just as quickly, she imagined no one ever opening that door. The picture of both possibilities tore her apart. Her hands clenched into fists. She hated that she cared. She hated that she wanted this promise to be different. She hated that her heart was daring to hope again after so many betrayals. The clock struck the half-hour mark. She flinched at the sound, as though it were mocking her. A voice inside whispered that she was foolish, that she should slip out now before the guards returned and threw her back on the street. Her body twitched with the urge to run. Her feet almost touched the floor, ready to bolt. But then her eyes landed on the sign, folded neatly beside her chair. The words stared back at her like an anchor. "Mr. Reeves, can I sleep in your doghouse? I have nowhere else to go." She gritted her teeth and pulled her knees tighter against her chest. She couldn't run. Not this time. She had to know if this promise was real. And so she waited, suspended in a fragile balance between despair and faith, until at last, footsteps echoed down the hallway. The handle of the door turned. The door opened slowly, and Lily's breath caught. For an instant, she braced herself for disappointment. for anyone but him. But when the tall figure stepped inside, his presence filled the room like a wave of calm. Keanu Reeves. His expression wasn't polished for cameras now. It was softer, heavier, his eyes carrying the weight of someone who had seen her pain and refused to look away. Behind him came a woman in her 40s, professional but kind. She wore a dark blazer, her hair pulled back, and carried a leather folder under one arm. Two assistants followed quietly, setting down bags on the table. The woman smiled first. "Lily, my name is Miss Navarro. I work with children who need safe places. I came to listen to you tonight." Lily's throat tightened. She looked from Miss Navarro to Keanu, afraid to believe this moment was real. But then Keanu knelt again, just like he had done on stage, lowering himself to her level so his eyes met hers without walls or distance. "I told you I'd come," he said gently, "and I keep my promises." The words broke something inside her. A sob escaped before she could stop it, raw and shaking. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed of the tears. But Keanu didn't flinch. He waited, steady and patient, until she lifted her head again. Miss Navarro pulled a chair, close, and sat down, her tone calm, measured. "You don't have to tell us everything at once, Lily. Just what you want us to know. Whatever you say, we'll listen." Lily's voice wavered. "My mom, she died last year. My dad, he disappeared. They said foster homes would help, but they didn't. Some places were scary. Some people didn't care. I couldn't stay anymore." She clutched the photograph of her mother against her chest, as if holding it could keep her from unraveling. "I just need somewhere safe tonight. Even a doghouse would be more than I have." The room went still. The assistants looked down, their faces heavy with sorrow. Miss Navarro blinked back her own emotion, writing a note with deliberate care. But it was Keanu's eyes that made Lily pause. They glistened, not with pity, but with understanding. He reached out slowly, resting his hand gently on the table between them, not forcing, not demanding, just there. "You deserve more than a doghouse," he said softly. "You deserve a home, and people who won't let you down again." Lily's lips trembled. "People always say that." "I know," he replied, voice steady as stone. "But I'm not going to disappear. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not until we figure this out. Wait here with Miss Navarro, and I promise, you will not go back out there alone." The weight of his words settled over her like a shield. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt her lungs expand with something other than fear. It was fragile, trembling, but it was hope. She nodded, clutching the photo tighter, and for the first time, she dared to believe him. The room was quiet again after Keanu's promise, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt different, like a fragile space where truth could finally live. Miss Navarro opened her folder, a pen resting lightly in her hand, her expression patient. Keanu stayed seated across from Lily, his eyes never leaving hers, as though he were willing her to believe that she mattered. Lily swallowed hard. Her fingers fumbled with the edges of her photograph, smoothing it again and again until the paper nearly tore. She stared down at it as though drawing strength from her mother's smile. Then, haltingly, she began, "My mom got sick when I was 10. It was cancer. At first, she tried to hide it from me, but I knew something was wrong. She stopped singing when she cooked. She stopped laughing at the little things. Then her hair started falling out, and she couldn't get out of bed. Her voice cracked, and she gripped the photo tighter. I tried to help. I brought her water, made her toast, read to her when she couldn't sleep. But every day she got weaker. And then one night, she called me to her bed. She said she was sorry she couldn't stay, but that I had to be strong. She told me to look for helpers when things got dark. And then she was gone." Tears welled in her eyes, but she pressed forward, words tumbling out now like a flood that couldn't be stopped. "After that, my dad, he couldn't handle it. He just broke. He started drinking all the time, sometimes disappearing for days. When he was home, he wasn't really there. He'd just sit in the dark, staring at nothing. Then one morning, he left a note on the table saying he couldn't do it anymore. He promised he'd come back when he was better, but he never did. Keanu's jaw tightened. His hands, resting on his knees, curled into fists. He said nothing, but his eyes burned with restrained fury, not at Lily, not at her father even, but at the merciless weight that had crushed them both. Lily's voice grew smaller. The state put me in foster care. They said it would be better, but it wasn't. The first house had 4 other kids. The foster mom yelled all the time, and if you cried, she locked you in your room. The second place, the man there looked at me in ways that made me scared, so I ran. They caught me and sent me to another house. There, the parents didn't care if I ate. I slept on the floor most nights. Nobody wanted me. I felt like I was just extra, like luggage someone had to carry until they could pass me off again. Her shoulders shook, but she pushed through, her eyes glistening. I started staying away, at school, in libraries, anywhere else. And when they finally tried to move me again, I left for good. I thought maybe I could survive on my own, but it's so cold at night, and people look right through you like you're not even there. She lifted her head slowly, her gaze meeting Keanu's, fragile but burning with the need to be heard. That's why I held up the sign. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would finally see me. Miss Navarro's pen paused mid-note. She lowered it slowly, the weight of Lily's words pressing against her chest. She had heard many stories over the years: broken homes, shattered trust, children failed by a system meant to protect them. But something about this girl's trembling honesty cut deeper than most. "Lily," she said gently, "I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. You should never have been treated that way." She glanced at Keanu, her eyes grave. "I've reviewed some of her case files. The placements weren't stable. Multiple reports of neglect, but no follow-through. She slipped through cracks that should never exist." Keanu leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his fists tight against his thighs. His voice was calm, but it carried a sharp edge beneath. "You mean to tell me people knew? They had reports and nothing changed?" Miss Navarro nodded reluctantly. "The truth is, the foster system is overloaded. Too many children, not enough oversight. And sometimes the wrong people are allowed to foster for the wrong reasons. Lily's story, it isn't unique. That's the worst part." The words hung in the air like a stone. Keanu's eyes darkened, his jaw working as though he were holding back the urge to shout. He exhaled through his nose, forcing himself to stay steady for Lily's sake. When he looked back at her, his anger softened into sorrow. "You deserved love," he said quietly. "You deserved safety. None of this was your fault." Lily blinked, confused by the certainty in his tone. "But maybe if I'd been better, quieter, easier to take care of." "No," Keanu interrupted firmly, his voice rising just enough to cut through her doubt. "Don't ever think that. You were a child. It was the adults who failed you, not you." His words settled over her like a blanket, heavy but warm. She hugged the photograph of her mother tighter, a tear slipping down her cheek. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to defend herself. Someone else was willing to carry the weight of the blame. Miss Navarro leaned closer. "He's right. Children aren't responsible for the failures of adults. Your story matters, Lily. Every detail you've shared tonight will help us make sure you're not placed in another unsafe situation. I'm scared it'll just happen again, that I'll get sent somewhere else, and no one will listen." Keanu's gaze never wavered. "Then listen to me. You're not invisible anymore. You've been seen, and I won't let you disappear back into that system without a fight." His words cracked something open inside her. For months she had been invisible, a shadow slipping through streets, ignored by strangers. Now, sitting in this quiet room, she was finally visible. And it terrified her as much as it healed her. The silence after his words stretched, but it wasn't empty. It carried a weight, a promise, thick in the air. Lily studied his face, searching for cracks, waiting for the moment when compassion would fade and pity would take its place, the way it always did. But his eyes didn't falter. They held, steady, full of something she hadn't seen in a very long time: conviction. Keanu leaned back slightly, unclenching his fists with effort. His voice was lower now, but it pulsed with strength. I can't change what you've been through. I can't take away those nights you were hungry or scared, but I can promise you this. Starting tonight, you will never have to wonder if someone cares. You will never have to hold up a sign again just to be seen. Lily's lips parted, her breath shallow. The words pressed against the walls of her heart, fragile and unreal. Do you mean I can stay? Keanu glanced at Miss Navarro, who gave a small nod of encouragement. He turned back to Lily. You will not be left alone tonight. You'll be somewhere safe. That's the first step. He paused, his eyes narrowing with quiet resolve. But I don't want to stop there. I don't want to give you just a bed for one night. You deserve more than survival. You deserve a life, Lily. A real life. Her fingers tightened around her photograph. But people say that, and then they leave. He shook his head firmly. I'm not people. I've seen too much to look away now. If I walk out of here and pretend you're just another face, then I've failed you. And I won't do that. Not to you. Not to any other kid who's been ignored. For a moment, the room was utterly still. Miss Navarro looked at him, her eyes wide, realizing this wasn't just about one girl anymore. His words carried the beginning of something larger, a shift that could ripple far beyond tonight. Lily wiped her cheeks with the back of her sleeve, her voice small but steady. You really mean it? Keanu leaned closer, his tone softer but unshakable. Yes, Lily. You're not invisible anymore. You've been seen. And once someone is seen, they can't be unseen. I'm going to make sure the world remembers that. The tension in her shoulders broke. She let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside her for years. For the first time, she dared to believe the helpers her mother had spoken of might be real. And for the first time, Keanu Reeves's resolve began to take shape not as a passing kindness, but as the spark of something that could change everything. The plan unfolded quickly, but not recklessly. Keanu knew words were powerful, but Lily needed something tangible before the night ended. He stood and spoke softly to Miss Navarro, who nodded and stepped aside to make a phone call. Lily watched them, her chest tight, unsure whether to hope or brace for another disappointment. When Keanu returned to her side, he crouched down again, so they were eye to eye. Lily, I have some friends, the Hendersons. They're good people. People I trust. They've been like family to me for years. Tonight, you'll stay with them. Her brow furrowed. Like, in their house? Yes, he said firmly. Their home. It's warm. It's safe. And they're already making space for you. You won't be alone tonight. The words felt too big to believe. A home just for her? She bit her lip, her mind racing with suspicion. But what if they don't want me? What if they change their minds? Keanu shook his head. They do want you. I called them myself. They're waiting for you right now. At that, Miss Navarro stepped closer. I'll also be checking in, Lily. This isn't just anyone's house. This is a trusted family I've worked with before. They know what it means to open their doors to a child in need, and Keanu will be in touch with you. You're not being dropped off and forgotten. Lily's eyes darted between them, searching for cracks in the promise. But their steady expressions gave her no escape. Slowly, she nodded, though her shoulders remained tight. The ride across town was quiet. Lily sat in the back seat of a dark SUV, her sign and photograph clutched to her chest, the city lights flickering across her face. Keanu rode beside her, silent but present, his calm breathing grounding her in the stillness. When the car finally turned down a tree-lined street, Lily pressed her face against the window. The houses here looked nothing like the shelters or foster homes she had known. They glowed with porch lights, curtains drawn back to reveal families around dinner tables, laughter spilling out into the night. It felt like another world, one she didn't belong to. The SUV slowed in front of a pale blue house, with a wide porch and hanging flower baskets. Warm light streamed from the windows, and the front door opened before the car even stopped. A woman with chestnut hair pulled back in a bun stepped outside, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile was wide, her eyes shining with welcome. "That's Mrs. Henderson," Keanu said softly. "She's been waiting for you." Lily's stomach knotted. She wasn't sure if she wanted to run forward or bolt back into the car, but Keanu's hand rested gently on her shoulder, steadying her trembling frame. "You're safe here," he whispered. "I promise." The front porch light glowed like a beacon as Lily climbed the steps with hesitant feet. Mrs. Henderson opened the door wide, the smell of something rich and savory drifting out to greet them. "Welcome, sweetheart," she said warmly, her voice carrying no trace of hesitation. "We've been waiting for you." Lily froze, her sign clutched tight against her chest. She wasn't used to doors opening so easily. Most of her life had been about doors closing, locks clicking, spaces shutting her out. Keanu gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "It's all right. Go on." Inside, the house felt alive. The walls were painted warm tones, photographs lined the hallways, and soft music played faintly in the background. The air smelled of garlic, tomatoes, and baked bread. Lily's stomach growled involuntarily, and Mrs. Henderson's smile deepened. "It'll be ready in just a few minutes, and I made extra garlic bread because my daughter insists it's the best part." At the mention of her daughter, footsteps pounded on the stairs. A girl with auburn hair and curious brown eyes appeared, about Lily's age. She wore pajamas decorated with stars, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. "Hi," she said, her voice cheerful but not pushy. "I'm Emma. You must be Lily." Lily blinked, startled at being addressed so directly. Yeah," Emma grinned. "Come on, I'll show you my room while dinner's finishing. You can sit with me. Mom makes enough lasagna to feed an army." The invitation was so casual, so normal, that Lily didn't know how to respond. She looked up at Keanu, as if to ask silently if this was really okay. He nodded. "Go ahead, I'll be right here." Emma led the way upstairs, talking lightly about her school, her favorite books, and the soccer team she'd joined last spring. Lily followed slowly, her eyes darting to every detail. The family photos, the framed drawings, the little scuffs along the banister that made the house feel lived in. It was so different from the cold walls of foster houses, where she'd been treated like an intruder. When they reached Emma's room, Lily's breath caught. The walls were painted lavender, shelves stacked with books and trophies, and a bed piled high with blankets and pillows. Emma plopped down casually on the rug and picked up a stuffed bear. "You can borrow this if you want," she said. "I've had him since I was 5, but he still listens when you talk." Lily stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed. She didn't sit, didn't move, afraid this kindness was a trick, but Emma didn't seem to notice. She just smiled and said, "Dinner's almost ready. You'll see." Mom makes the best lasagna in the world. For the first time, Lily felt the tiniest spark of possibility that maybe, just maybe, this house could be different. The kitchen table was set when Lily came back downstairs with Emma. Plates of steaming lasagna were waiting, golden cheese bubbling on top, and a basket of garlic bread sat in the middle. Mr. Henderson had come home while they were upstairs. He was tall, with gentle eyes, behind his glasses, and greeted Lily with a quiet kindness. "We're glad you're here tonight," he said, pulling out a chair for her, as though she'd always belonged. Lily sat stiffly at first, unsure how to hold herself. But the warmth of the room, the clatter of forks, and the easy conversation around her began to melt the edges of her fear. Emma chattered about school projects, Mrs. Henderson teased her husband about burning toast earlier in the week, and laughter filled the air. It felt foreign, like a language Lily had forgotten but somehow understood deep down. When Mrs. Henderson placed a generous portion on Lily's plate, she hesitated. The smell was almost too much. Slowly, she took a bite. The flavors burst across her tongue, cheese, sauce, pasta, and she closed her eyes for a moment just to take it in. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she'd eaten something made with care. "Good?" Mrs. Henderson asked gently. Lily nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with tears. She ate quickly at first, then more slowly, savoring every bite. When she reached for a second piece of garlic bread, Emma grinned. "Told you it's the best part." After dinner, Mrs. Henderson handed Lily a folded bundle. "These are pajamas. Emma's outgrown but still in great shape. They should fit you fine. And the bathroom's just down the hall. Take your time with the shower. There are fresh towels waiting." Lily froze, staring at the bundle in her hands. Clean pajamas, towels that were just for her, a shower without someone pounding on the door. It felt unreal. The bathroom was warm and bright, steam rising as hot water cascaded from the shower head. Lily stepped under it slowly, the water hitting her skin like a revelation. Dirt and weariness slid away, and she leaned against the wall, eyes closed, letting the heat soak into her bones. It was more than a shower. It was a kind of baptism, washing away months of fear and loneliness. Later, she slipped into the pajamas, soft and smelling faintly of lavender detergent, and followed Emma into the bedroom. Two beds stood side by side Emma's, and one freshly made, with crisp sheets and a fluffy blanket. Lily touched the pillow with trembling fingers, almost afraid it would vanish. She climbed in slowly, pulling the blanket to her chin. Emma whispered across the darkened room, "Good night. I'm glad you're here." Lily lay still for a long time, staring at the ceiling, her heart beating in disbelief. Finally, she whispered into the darkness, "If this is a dream, please don't let me wake up." And for the first time in months, sleep came softly, without fear. The first thing Lily noticed was the smell. It drifted into the room like a gentle hand waking her. Sweet, warm, buttery, the unmistakable scent of pancakes. For a moment, she lay still, her mind tangled in confusion. She was used to waking on cold pavement, to the acrid bite of car exhaust, or the sterile odor of foster homes where breakfast was a rushed bowl of cereal, if there was anything at all. This was different. This was home. Her eyes opened slowly. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting the lavender walls in gold. The blanket still cocooned her, soft against her skin. She rolled over and saw Emma already up, brushing her hair at the dresser. Emma caught her gaze in the mirror and grinned. "You're awake. Mom's making pancakes. If you don't hurry, my dad'll eat them all." Lily blinked, the words sinking in. Pancakes, a family joking about breakfast. It felt like a storybook world she wasn't meant to enter. She pushed back the covers carefully, as though afraid someone might snatch them away. The pajamas fit comfortably, still carrying that faint lavender scent. She padded across the room, following Emma's cheerful footsteps. Downstairs, the kitchen glowed with morning light. Mrs. Henderson stood at the stove, flipping pancakes onto a growing stack, while Mr. Henderson set the table. A jug of orange juice and plates of bacon and scrambled eggs were already waiting. The scene felt almost unreal, like a photograph of family life she had never been part of. "Good morning, Lily," Mrs. Henderson said warmly, glancing over her shoulder. "Did you sleep well?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, thank you." Mr. Henderson pulled out a chair for her, just as he had the night before. "Sit down, kiddo. We've got plenty." Emma plopped into her own chair, already reaching for a strip of bacon. "Dad makes the best eggs, but Mom wins with pancakes." Lily sat gingerly, her eyes darting between the plates of food. The smell made her stomach ache with sudden hunger, but old habits kept her cautious. She waited, unsure if she was supposed to reach out. Mrs. Henderson noticed and gently placed 2 pancakes on Lily's plate, adding a spoonful of eggs and a couple strips of bacon. She set a small pitcher of syrup beside her. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Eat as much as you like." The first bite was almost overwhelming. The pancake was fluffy, warm, slightly sweet, the syrup dripping down the edges. She closed her eyes briefly, savoring it. Her chest tightened. It had been so long since food had tasted like comfort instead of survival. Emma grinned at her across the table. "Told you, best pancakes ever." For the first time, in what felt like forever, Lily let out a small laugh. It was soft, hesitant, but real. After breakfast, the table was littered with crumbs, syrup drips, and half-empty glasses of orange juice. Mr. Henderson leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee with a contented sigh. "That's how every morning should start," he said. "A full belly and good company." Lily's fork clinked against her plate as she finished the last bit of scrambled egg. She sat very still, waiting for someone to scold her for eating too much. But instead, Mrs. Henderson smiled softly. "You ate beautifully. I'll make sure there's always more if you're still hungry. You don't have to worry here, Lily. We'll take care of that." The reassurance pressed against her chest, warm but almost painful. She nodded quickly, not trusting her voice. Emma broke the silence with her usual ease. "So, what do you think of our house? I mean, it's not a mansion or anything, but we've got a pretty awesome backyard. There's a treehouse." "A treehouse?" Lily asked, her eyes widening. "Yeah, my dad and I built it a few summers ago. You can see the whole street from up there. We can hang out there later if you want." Lily tried to picture herself climbing into a treehouse, laughing like she belonged. It felt too good, too foreign, but she managed a small nod. "I'd like that." Mr. Henderson leaned forward, his elbows on the table. His tone was gentle, careful. "Lily, there are a few things we should talk about, just so you know what to expect. Nothing heavy, just the basics of living here." Lily stiffened, her body bracing. He noticed and immediately softened his words. "It's not rules to punish you. It's just routines. Breakfast in the morning, dinner together at night. Emma goes to school during the week, and you'll have the chance to go too, once we figure out the details with Miss Navarro. But in between, you're free to be a kid. Play, read, rest. No one's locking you away or making you prove yourself." Mrs. Henderson reached over, brushing a stray hair from Lily's face. "Safety is the most important thing here. You're safe with us. That means you'll never be left alone to wonder where you'll sleep or what you'll eat. We promise you that." Lily's throat tightened. She wanted to believe them, wanted so badly to let their words sink deep into the hollow places carved by years of loss. But she had been disappointed too many times. Safety always seemed to vanish when she reached for it. Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. Mr. Henderson rose, setting down his mug. Through the glass panel of the door, Lily saw him. Keanu Reeves stood outside, hands in the pockets of his jacket, quiet, but steady as ever. When the door opened, his gaze landed on her immediately. He stepped inside, offered the Hendersons a polite greeting, and then crouched slightly to meet Lily's eyes. "Morning, Lily. Did you sleep okay?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Yes, it was good." Keanu gave a small smile and reached into his pocket. He held out a folded piece of paper. "This is my direct number. If you ever feel unsafe, if you ever need me, day or night you call. No waiting, no questions." Her hand trembled as she accepted it. For the first time in years, she felt like someone truly meant those words. The number sat in Lily's palm like a lifeline. She folded it carefully, pressing it flat against her chest as though she could push it straight into her heart. It was only paper, but to her, it felt like armor. Keanu noticed the way she clung to it. "You don't have to carry the whole weight of survival anymore," he said quietly. "You're not invisible, Lily. Not anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded quickly, too choked up to speak, and he didn't press her. The Hendersons moved into the kitchen, giving them space, though Mrs. Henderson shot a glance of quiet approval at Keanu. He stood slowly, his presence as calm as always, but his eyes betrayed a storm underneath. Miss Navarro had arrived with him, and now stepped closer, her tablet tucked under her arm. She watched Lily with professional care but also personal warmth. "She's fragile, but she's strong," Navarro murmured. "You can see it in the way she holds herself." Keanu's jaw tightened. Strong kids shouldn't have to carry that much. She asked for a doghouse. That's how little she thought she deserved, and it shattered me. Navarro placed a hand on his arm. One night of safety isn't enough. She needs consistency. She needs something built to last. Keanu's gaze lingered on Lily, who was now laughing softly with Emma as they cleared plates from the table. The sound was light, tentative, like the first bird singing at dawn. It filled him with determination. "You're right," he said. His voice was low but steady, a man already making promises to himself. "I don't just want to give her a bed tonight. I want to change her tomorrow. Not only hers, but kids like her kids no one sees." Navarro studied him, weighing his words. "That's a big undertaking, bigger than charity. It's a system problem." "Then we start with one," Keanu said. "We start with her, and we build outward." In the living room, Lily glanced back at him, the folded paper still clutched in her hand. She wanted so badly to believe in this new reality. The warm kitchen, the laughter, the smell of pancakes still lingering in the air. But fear crawled at the edges of her heart. What if it disappeared, like all the other safe places? What if she woke up tomorrow and it was gone? That night, as she lay in the Hendersons' guest room again, she whispered into the darkness, "Please, if this is a dream, don't let me wake up." And somewhere down the hall, Keanu sat with Miss Navarro, the two of them sketching the faint outlines of something larger than either of them had admitted aloud yet. For Lily, this was a fragile beginning. For Keanu, it was the spark of a revolution waiting to be born. The Henderson home had begun to feel like a fragile bubble of safety. Each morning brought new routines. Emma waiting at the kitchen table, Mrs. Henderson humming as she prepared breakfast, Mr. Henderson reading the paper with quiet steadiness. Lily had started to relax, just slightly, as if her body no longer needed to brace for survival every second. But safety always felt temporary to her, like a fragile thread ready to snap. That morning, Miss Navarro arrived earlier than expected. She carried her tablet and a slim folder, her expression serious yet soft. She greeted the Hendersons politely before asking if she could speak to Lily in private. Lily's stomach tightened at the request. Private conversations usually meant bad news, another move, another loss. They sat together in the living room, the morning light spilling across the carpet. Miss Navarro placed the folder on her lap and folded her hands over it. Her voice was calm, measured, but there was weight behind her words. "Lily, I've been making calls, trying to understand your case fully. You told me your father left and you didn't know where he went. We've been searching, and I need to tell you something important." Lily froze. She wanted to ask what, but the words stuck in her throat. Miss Navarro leaned forward. "Your father is alive. He's in a treatment facility in New Mexico. He's been there for 6 weeks, receiving care for depression and addiction." The air seemed to leave the room. Lily's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought Miss Navarro must hear it, alive. She had told herself for months that he was probably dead, that believing otherwise hurt too much. To hear the opposite felt like being thrown into cold water, shocking, disorienting, impossible to process. "He's alive?" Lily whispered at last. "Yes," Miss Navarro said gently, "and he's been asking about you. He told the staff at the facility that leaving you was his biggest regret. He's been trying to get better so that he can be the father you need." The words landed like both comfort and betrayal. Relief surged through Lily's chest, almost painful in its intensity. But anger rushed in right behind it, hot and sharp. He had left her. He had chosen to walk away, leaving her to face hunger and fear and the cold. What right did he have to want to come back now? Her voice cracked when she finally asked, "Why didn't he come back for me? Why did he just leave?" Miss Navarro reached out, her hand warm and steady on Lily's trembling fingers. "He was very sick, Lily. Not in the way your mother was, but sick in his mind and heart. Depression and grief cloud judgment. Addiction makes people do things they would never do if they were well. It doesn't excuse what happened, but it explains why he couldn't be there." Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. She hated that they came so easily now, hated that she couldn't hold them back. Relief that he wasn't dead mixed with fury that he had abandoned her. Hope tangled with fear that trusting him again would only end in more pain. Miss Navarro gave her a moment before speaking again. He asked if he could talk to you. Only if you're ready. There's no pressure, but I wanted you to know the choice is yours. Lily sat in silence, the folder on Navarro's lap blurring through her tears. A storm raged inside her, every emotion clashing at once. The phone sat on the table between them, silent but heavy with possibility. Lily stared at it, as though it might bite her. "Miss." Navarro spoke gently. "He knows you may not want to talk. He'll understand if you say no. But if you're willing, I can connect the call right now." Lily's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Part of her wanted to run, to slam the door and hide from the weight of it all. But another part, the braver part, whispered that maybe she needed to hear his voice. Even if it hurt, even if it reopened wounds. She'd tried to close. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll talk to him." Miss Navarro dialed quickly and put the phone on speaker. After a few rings, a man's voice broke through, shaky and desperate. "Hello? Is she there? Is my daughter there?" Lily's throat closed. The voice was rougher than she remembered, older, lined with pain. But it was his, her father's voice. "It's me," she said softly. There was silence, then a broken sob. "Oh, God. Lily, I thought I'd lost you forever. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry." Her fingers dug into her knees. Anger surged to the surface. "You left me in that car. You said you'd come back, and I waited for 3 days. You never came." "I know," he choked out. "I hate myself for it. I was so sick, Lily. I couldn't think straight. I thought you'd be safer without me. I was wrong. I abandoned you, and I'll never forgive myself." Hot tears burned her eyes. "Do you know what happened to me after? Do you know the places I ended up? The closet they shoved me into? The bridges I had to sleep under? You weren't there, Dad. You left me when I needed you the most." Each word cut like glass, but she couldn't stop. She needed him to hear it. On the other end, her father sobbed openly. I know I failed you. I was broken after your mother died. I drowned in grief, in pills, in alcohol. I thought I couldn't be what you needed, but every day since, I've wished I'd stayed. I'm in treatment now, Lily. I'm trying to be better. For you." Her anger trembled, faltered, reshaped itself into something else. Fear of believing him, fear of trusting him, only to be let down again. "How do I know you won't disappear again?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't," he admitted. "All I can do is show you, day by day. I can't erase what I did, but I can prove I'm not giving up again. I want to be your dad. I want to earn it back." Her hands trembled so badly she had to grip the edge of the table to steady herself. She didn't know if she could forgive him. Not yet. But hearing his voice, hearing his regret, cracked something open inside her she thought had died hope. The line grew quiet except for her father's uneven breathing. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You hurt me," she whispered. "You hurt me so much, but I don't want you gone forever. I don't know if I can trust you yet." His voice cracked. "You don't have to, not yet. Just give me a chance to prove myself. I'll call when I say I will. I'll write if you want. I'll do anything. I just need you to know I never stopped loving you." Lily closed her eyes. The words pressed against her heart like a heavy stone. Love. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to let it in. But love had failed her before. "I'll talk to you again," she said finally. "But I can't promise more right now." "That's enough," he whispered. "Thank you, Lily. Thank you for giving me even that, Miss." Navarro ended the call gently, leaving the room in a silence thick with emotion. Lily sat still, her fists clenched, her breath shaky. Relief that her father was alive tangled with anger that he had left, with fear that trusting him again might shatter her all over. The sound of footsteps pulled her from the storm in her chest. Keanu entered quietly, his expression soft, his presence grounding. He didn't sit right away. He simply stood nearby, giving her space. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, deep, and kind. "It's okay to feel everything at once," he said. "Relief, anger, fear. None of those feelings cancel each other out. They all belong to you." Her eyes searched his face, desperate for something steady. What if he breaks his promise again? What if I believe him, and he leaves me all over? Keanu lowered himself into the chair across from her. His hands rested calmly on himself. "Knees, healing takes time, both for him and for you. It's not about rushing trust. It's about watching what he does, not just what he says. And no matter what happens, you won't be facing it alone anymore." The assurance loosened something inside her chest. She leaned forward, whispering, "I'm so tired of being alone." "You're not," Keanu said firmly. "Not anymore. You have people now. Navarro, the Hendersons, me. We see you. You've been seen." She wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, or what role her father would play in it. But for the first time in a long while, she felt anchored not by promises that might break, but by the presence of someone who had no intention of leaving. The conversation with her father still echoed in Lily's ears when Keanu asked her to step outside with him. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint smell of grass and the hum of crickets. They stood near the Hendersons' porch, the light from the kitchen spilling out behind them. Keanu crouched down slightly so his eyes were level with hers. His face, lit by the porch light, looked older than the movie star she'd seen in films. There were lines of worry, of thought, of someone who carried too much of the world on his shoulders. "Lily," he began softly, "I've been thinking about something since the night you held up that sign." Her fingers twisted together nervously. "The doghouse?" He nodded. "Yes. You asked for a doghouse because that was the smallest, safest thing you could imagine. 4 walls, a roof, nothing more. But that sign told me something bigger. You weren't asking just for shelter. You were asking to be seen, to be cared for, to be safe. And you're not the only one. There are thousands of kids like you, forgotten by the system." Lily's breath caught. "Thousands?" "More than that," Keanu said, his tone heavy with truth. "Kids in closets, in broken foster homes, under bridges, in cars. Kids carrying scars no one bothers to notice. I can't stop thinking about it. It's not enough for me to make sure you have a bed tonight, or tomorrow. That matters, but it's not enough. You asked me for a doghouse, Lily. What I want to build is a place that makes doghouses unnecessary. A home where kids can heal, grow, and finally believe they matter." Lily blinked up at him, unsure she'd heard him right. "For kids like me?" Keanu's expression softened. He reached out, resting a steady hand over hers. "No, Lily. For kids like us. For every child who's ever felt invisible." The words settled deep inside her, heavy and impossible, and yet dazzling. Like staring into the Sunday she had come here asking for so little. A corner to survive in, and now he was speaking of something so large, so impossible, that she could hardly comprehend it. "What do you mean? Like a shelter?" she asked. "Not just a shelter," Keanu explained. His voice grew more determined, his eyes lit by quiet fire. "A residential school. A place designed for kids. The system failed. You'd live there, but it wouldn't be like foster care. Every child would have their own room, their own bed. There'd be teachers, counselors, therapists, meals every day, and adults who actually care. Not strangers who see you as a burden, but people trained to help you heal and succeed. A place where invisibility ends." Lily shook her head slowly, stunned. "That doesn't exist." "Not yet," he said, "but it will." Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. "You'd build that? For real?" Keanu's answer came without hesitation. "For real. And it starts tonight." He pulled his phone from his pocket and began scrolling through contacts. "I know people who can help. Architects, teachers, counselors, friends who believe in making real change. I'm calling them. I don't want this to wait another day. Watching him dial, Lily felt dizzy. It was too big, too unreal. But the certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. She hugged her arms around herself, whispering almost to herself, "A real place for kids like me." Keanu looked back at her, his voice steady as stone. "For kids like us. And it begins now." Keanu stepped a few feet away, phone pressed to his ear, his tone calm but urgent. Lily could hear pieces of the conversation drift across the porch. "Yes, it's Keanu. I need you to pull the plans we discussed last year, the residential program idea. No, I'm not waiting this time. We start now. Architects, contractors. The budget is not the problem. The problem is kids being left behind." He ended one call only to make another. Then, another. Each time his voice carried the same intensity. Words like blueprints, staffing, and counselors floated through the air, terms Lily had never heard anyone say in her defense before. She hugged her knees to her chest, listening, hardly daring to believe any of it was real. Miss Navarro joined him after a few minutes, quietly jotting notes. "We'll need licensing," she murmured. "State approvals, inspections, trauma-informed staff, the right partnerships, and we'll have them," Keanu said, without missing a beat. "Hire the best, pay them well, no corners cut." From the porch step, Lily's voice came out small but sharp. "Why are you doing this?" Keanu turned back toward her. His eyes softened, though his determination never wavered. "Because you asked for something as small as a doghouse. And it made me realize how broken things are, how little the world expects kids like you to hope for. You deserve more. Every child deserves more. I can build movies. I can build careers. But if I can't help build a future for kids like you, then what am I really doing?" Lily's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken of her life in those terms before. No one had looked at her and seen. Not a problem to hide away, but a spark worth building a whole world around. Miss Navarro crouched near Lily. "This won't happen overnight, but it will happen. You'll be part of it too. Your voice, your experience, it's what will shape this place." Lily shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't know anything about schools. I'm just me." Keanu crouched in front of her, steady and patient. "You know what it feels like to be invisible? That means you know exactly what needs to change. That makes you the most important voice at the table." Her eyes blurred with tears. "But it feels too big, too impossible." "Impossible things," Keanu said quietly, "are just things that haven't been tried yet. When you were brave enough to lift that sign, you started this. You lit the spark. I'm only fanning the flame." For the first time in months, Lily felt something powerful stir inside her. Not just relief or safety, but the fragile beginning of belief that maybe, just maybe, she mattered enough for a world to change. Keanu reached out his hand, waiting, patient. After a long pause, Lily placed her small hand in his. His voice was steady when he said, "This isn't just a promise for tonight. This is the beginning of something bigger than both of us." And though fear still clung to her ribs, a flicker of hope finally dared to stay. The days that followed moved more quickly than Lily expected. What had once been endless hours of survival, marked only by hunger and fear, were now broken into routines. Morning breakfasts with the Hendersons, afternoons spent helping Emma with homework, evenings around the dinner table where everyone had a chance to talk about their day. It felt strange, but in a way that left her both unsettled and grateful. One morning, Miss Navarro arrived with a stack of forms and a careful smile. "We're starting the process for your school enrollment, Lily. Nothing too heavy just yet. We'll ease you in, make sure you're comfortable." School had always been a place of mixed memories for Lily. Sometimes it had been a refuge. Other times, it had been cruel, filled with stares and whispers about the girl who wore the same clothes too many days in a row. But hearing Miss Navarro say it now didn't fill her with dread the way she expected. Maybe this time would be different. That same week, she sat down for her first therapy session, a gentle woman named Dr. Patel welcomed her into an office filled with warm light and shelves of children's books. A bowl of colorful stress balls sat on the desk, and the faint scent of lavender floated in the air. Lily sat stiffly in the chair, her eyes darting everywhere but at the doctor. Dr. Patel spoke softly. "You don't have to say anything. You're not ready to. We can just sit here, if that feels safer. Or you can draw. Or squeeze one of those stress balls. This is your time." For several minutes, Lily sat silent, her small hands twisting in her lap. The silence stretched until finally she whispered, "I can't sleep without hearing them." Dr. Patel tilted her head gently. "Hearing who?" "The people in the houses," Lily said, her voice trembling. "The ones who yelled, the ones who locked me in the closet. I still hear them in my head, even though I'm not there anymore." Her chest shook as she tried to hold back the tears, but they came anyway, hot and heavy. She pressed her fist to her eyes. "I don't want to dream about it anymore. I'm scared every night that it's going to happen again, that someone's going to take me back." Dr. Patel didn't rush in with solutions. She leaned forward, her tone calm, grounding. "That fear is normal after what you went through. Nightmares are your body's way of holding on to the danger, even when you're safe. But you are safe now, Lily. And every time you talk about it, even a little, the fear loses some of its power." The words cracked something open inside her. For the first time, Lily felt as though someone wasn't asking her to hide her pain or be tough. She didn't have to wear armor here. The tears came harder, but this time they felt like release rather than shame. That night, when Mrs. Henderson tucked her in, Lily whispered, I told her about the closet." Mrs. Henderson brushed a strand of hair from her face. "That was brave, Lily. Braver than you know." And as she closed her eyes, though the nightmares still lurked, she felt a tiny crack of light piercing the dark. While Lily was taking her first tentative steps toward healing, Keanu was buried in blueprints. In a quiet corner office, long after the meetings were done, he sat with an architect, spreading out sketches across the table. "It can't look like an institution," he said firmly. "No gray walls, no rows of cots. These kids have seen enough of that. It needs to feel like a home." The architect nodded, scribbling notes. "Warm colors, natural light, private rooms. We'll design common spaces that feel like living rooms, not cafeterias." Keanu leaned back, his eyes distant but determined. He pictured Lily sitting at a table with friends, laughing. He imagined children who had been invisible finally stepping into places designed for them, places where they could belong. Every line on the blueprint felt personal. Meanwhile, Lily's days at the Hendersons settled into something resembling normal. She had breakfast with pancakes or cereal instead of scavenged scraps. She walked with Emma to the park, their conversations awkward at first, then easier, filled with giggles about teachers and music. At night, she sometimes still woke crying, but Mrs. Henderson would come and sit by her bed, patient and steady. Slowly, the walls around Lily's heart began to crumble. At her second therapy session, she admitted something new. "I don't know if I deserve this," she said softly. "All this kindness, it feels like it's going to disappear. Like I'll wake up and it'll be gone." Dr. Patel smiled gently. "That's what trauma does. It convinces you that good things can't last. But healing is learning to believe again, little by little, that safety can be real. That love doesn't have to vanish." Lily clutched the small photo of her mother she always carried. For the first time, she whispered, "Maybe she'd want me to believe in this." That evening, Keanu stopped by the Hendersons' house. He knocked softly, as if not wanting to disturb the fragile peace inside. Lily opened the door, surprised but happy to see him. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a piece of paper with his phone number. "That's my direct line," he said. "If anything ever feels wrong, if you're scared, or even if you just need to talk, you call me, day or night." Her eyes widened. "Even if it's really late?" "Especially if it's really late." Keanu answered with a small smile. Lily held the paper like it was treasure. For the first time, she felt a tether to safety that couldn't be broken by the night. That night, when she went to bed, she whispered into the dark, "Maybe this isn't a dream. Maybe this is the start of something real." And somewhere across the city, Keanu Reeves stood in front of another set of blueprints, his jaw set, his mind already turning to the future. He wasn't just giving Lily a safe place for tonight. He was building a future where no child like her would ever have to beg for a doghouse again. The morning air was crisp, with the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. The building, that had once been nothing more than sketches on Keanu's table, now stood tall and warm against the skyline. Horizon Academy was ready to open its doors. The brick exterior gleamed in the sunlight, its windows wide and welcoming, its gardens filled with flowers planted by volunteers who wanted to see hope take root in real soil. Inside, every hallway told a different story. The walls were painted in soft tones of blue and cream. Murals of trees and mountains stretched across the stairwells, created by local artists who had once known hardship themselves. Instead of cold, sterile corridors, Horizon Academy felt alive. It felt safe. And on this morning, 10 children would walk through its doors, carrying stories carved out of pain, but also the fragile seeds of hope. Lily stood near the entrance with Keanu, her hands clutching the hem of her dress. She was nervous, her stomach fluttering, but Keanu gave her a steady glance that reminded her she wasn't alone. This was the day she had unknowingly begun the moment she raised her cardboard sign. The first van pulled up, and out stepped a boy named Marcus, 14 years old. His shoulders stooped as if the world had pressed him down too long. He had lived in motels with his younger siblings until they were separated by the system. Marcus carried no suitcase, only a backpack with frayed straps. When he walked inside, he barely looked up, afraid to believe the promises written on the brochure. Behind him came Destiny, 13, her hair tied back, her eyes wary. She had grown up with a mother lost to drugs, shuffled between strangers' couches and shelters. Her voice was quiet, but her eyes scanned the room as though testing whether safety was real. Then arrived twins, Anthony and Maria, 10 years old. They had been found living in an abandoned house after their relatives left them behind. They clung to each other's hands so tightly, their knuckles turned white. For them, Horizon wasn't just a school. It was a chance to stay together. As the morning went on, more children entered. Sophia, who had fled an abusive stepfather. Caleb, whose mother was in prison. Jasmine, who had been left at a bus station by a foster parent who never returned. Each child carried invisible scars, yet their footsteps echoed with the sound of possibility as they walked into a place built just for them. By noon, the 10 students gathered in the common room. It wasn't a cold cafeteria, but a wide space with couches, bookshelves, and sunlight pouring in through skylights. Keanu stood before them, his hands folded loosely, his voice calm but strong. "This is your home now. Not just a school, a home. Every person here believes in you. And more than that, you are not alone anymore." The children shifted nervously, some glancing at Lily, who stood beside him. She felt the weight of their eyes. She had once been just like them, hungry, cold, invisible. She swallowed hard, then spoke. "I know it's scary to trust this. I didn't think I deserved help either, but I learned something. We all deserve more than a doghouse. We deserve to be safe, to be seen, and that's what this place is for." Her words hung in the air like a fragile bridge between fear and hope. One by one, the children nodded. Something shifted, small but undeniable. They were no longer strangers. They were the first family of Horizon Academy. After the introductions, Dr. Navarro led the group in a circle, encouraging each child to share one thing about themselves. The stories were uneven, jagged pieces of broken lives laid bare. Marcus said he didn't know if he could trust anyone, but he wanted to try. Destiny admitted she was tired of pretending she didn't care. The twins whispered their dream of never being separated again. Caleb said he wanted to be a mechanic someday, his voice carrying a spark of determination. Every confession was heavy, yet none of them had to carry it alone. Each story was met with nods of recognition, quiet murmurs of understanding. For the first time in their lives, these children were surrounded by others who knew exactly what it felt like to be forgotten. Lily sat quietly until it was her turn. Her voice trembled at first. "I was the girl with the sign," she said. "I asked to sleep in a doghouse because I thought that was all I deserved. But now I know that wasn't true. And neither is it true for you. You deserve more than scraps and fear. You deserve a life." Her words carried a weight no adult could have given. The children looked at her differently after that, as if she was proof that their pain didn't have to be permanent. Once the session ended, Keanu guided them to the entrance hall. In the center stood a glass display case. Inside it, carefully preserved, was Lily's original cardboard sign. The marker ink had faded, the edges torn from nights spent clutched in desperate hands. Beneath it, on a bronze plaque, were the words, "Where it all began. Never forget your courage." The children gathered around, their reflections flickering on the glass. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus whispered, "That little sign built all this?" Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "It wasn't just the sign. It was the courage to hold it up when the world was watching. Courage can start with something small, but it can change everything." "Then maybe we can be brave too," Keanu smiled gently. "That's exactly what this place is for. You'll learn, you'll grow, and together you'll heal. Horizon Academy belongs to you now. Let this sign remind you that even the smallest voice deserves to be heard." As the group moved it on, laughter began to echo faintly down the halls. It wasn't loud or carefree yet, but it was real. It was the sound of beginnings. And for the first time, Horizon Academy wasn't just a dream on paper. It was alive, filled with children who finally had a chance to believe in tomorrow. The first weeks at Horizon Academy were uneasy. The children carried invisible scars that didn't fade just because they'd been given beds and warm meals. Trust was a foreign language, one they had to learn syllable by syllable. At mealtimes, most of them ate quickly, hunched over their plates, as if someone might take their food away. At night, doors were double-checked, blankets pulled tight, and dreams were broken by sudden jolts awake. Healing, everyone knew, would not happen overnight. Yet, something subtle began to change. It started in the common room, where board games and books were set out to encourage the students to spend time together. At first, the games sat untouched. Then, one evening, Lily saw Boston, the oldest boy at 16, sitting at the chessboard by himself, moving the pieces back and forth. She hesitated, then sat across from him. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't chase her away. "You know how to play?" he asked. Lily nodded. They played in silence. When she unexpectedly won, Boston let out a short laugh, the first anyone had heard from him. That single laugh broke a wall, and by the end of the week, others joined in the games too. In the classroom, their teachers guided them gently. No yelling, no shaming, no mocking. Mistakes weren't punished. They were treated as chances to try again. That alone shocked the children. Destiny, who had flinched whenever someone raised their voice, slowly began to relax. Marcus, who refused to pick up a pencil the first week, eventually wrote his first essay about the day he was taken into foster care. The essay was raw, heartbreaking, and unfinished, but the teacher praised him for his honesty, not his spelling. Marcus's guarded expression cracked just enough to let in the smallest glimmer of pride. Lily found herself drawn to a girl named Mia. She was 13, with curly dark hair and quiet brown eyes that carried the same sadness Lily saw in her own reflection. Mia had lived in 3 foster homes, each one worse than the last. She rarely spoke, but one afternoon, while the group was painting in art class, Mia whispered, "I don't know how to draw anything happy." Lily looked at her canvas, where she had painted a crooked house with a little figure standing outside. "I don't either," Lily admitted softly. "But maybe we don't have to draw happy. Maybe we just draw honest." From that day forward, Mia began to sit next to her at meals, in class, and in therapy sessions. Their silence together felt like safety. The laughter grew louder as weeks passed. It was cautious at first, but slowly became natural. The walls inside the children's hearts began to soften. Shared stories became bridges instead of burdens. One night, as they all gathered for a movie in the common room, Lily realized something extraordinary. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving, she was beginning to belong. Keanu visited the academy often, though he never arrived with cameras or reporters. He would quietly slip in during the afternoons, sometimes sitting in the back of a classroom, other times sharing a meal in the cafeteria. The children were always nervous at first, whispering to each other, unsure how to act around him. But Keanu had a way of making himself ordinary. He poured his own water, carried trays, and asked simple questions about their favorite books or games. Slowly, the awe faded, and what remained was trust. One evening, Lily found him sitting outside on a bench, watching the sun dip behind the trees that lined the campus. She hesitated before approaching, clutching the bracelet she wore on her wrist, a string tied by Mia earlier that day as a promise of friendship. Keanu noticed her in the corner of his eye and patted the empty space beside him. She sat down, the silence between them warm rather than heavy. "Everyone looks up to you here," Lily whispered. "Like you saved us." Keanu shook his head gently. "I'm not here to be anyone's savior," he said. "I'm here to walk with you while you heal. You already had the courage to survive. My job is just to make sure you have a place where that courage can grow." The words sank deep into her. For so long, Lily had felt invisible, a shadow no one noticed. To hear him say she already carried courage inside her gave her a strength she didn't know she had. She leaned back, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange, and felt something new rising inside her. Hope. Inside the academy, bonds strengthened every day. Mia became Lily's closest confidant. They whispered late into the night about their fears, their dreams, and what they hoped the future could hold. Boston, once hardened by the streets, taught the younger kids how to play basketball, cheering them on like a big brother. Marcus started sketching designs for a mural to paint on the academy's wall, his way of leaving a mark that said, "We were here, and we mattered." The staff noticed the changes too. Miss Navarro told Keanu during one of his visits that the children were not just improving academically, but emotionally. Nightmares were less frequent. Smiles were more common. Even the quietest voices were starting to speak up. It was proof that healing, though slow, was real. One night, after lights out, Lily whispered into the dark of her dorm room, "Mom, I think I found a family. Not the one I expected, but one that sees me." She thought about Keanu's words, about Mia's friendship, about the laughter that now filled halls once heavy with silence. For the first time, she wasn't just a girl clutching a sign, begging to be seen. She was part of something larger, a place where invisibility no longer existed. And though she still carried scars, Lily finally believed they wouldn't define her forever. The day Lily's father was scheduled to arrive, the air around Horizon Academy felt heavier than usual. Even the children who didn't know the details could sense something important was happening. Lily woke before dawn, her stomach in knots. For weeks she had known this day was coming, yet the reality of it now made her hands shake. Miss Navarro gently reminded her that she could set the pace. "You don't have to rush into anything you're not ready for. This is about you, Lily. You're in control." The reassurance helped, but only a little. By mid-morning, a car pulled into the driveway. Lily stood at the window of the common room, heart pounding. The man who stepped out looked both familiar and foreign. His shoulders were broader than she remembered, his posture more steady. His face carried lines of exhaustion, but also something she hadn't seen in years: clarity. He wasn't the broken, hollow figure who had disappeared into his addictions. He was still her father, but he was changed. When he walked into the academy, his eyes searched desperately until they landed on her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he whispered her name, "Lily." His voice cracked, and tears welled in his eyes. She felt frozen, torn between running to him and backing away. Memories clashed inside her, nights waiting in a car for him to come back, mornings without food, the ache of abandonment. But beneath all that, the ache of love remained. Finally, she took one slow step forward, then another. When she stopped a few feet away, he dropped to his knees. "I'm so sorry," he said, voice breaking completely. "I should have been there. I should have protected you. I let my pain destroy me, and I let it hurt you. I will never stop regretting that." She wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he had hurt her, but she also wanted to hold him and never let go. Both truths lived in her chest at once, colliding painfully. "You left me," she whispered. "You left me when I needed you most." His face crumpled. "I know. I can't erase it, but I'm trying to make it right. I've been clean for almost a year. I've gone through therapy, rehab, everything they told me to do. Not just for me, but for you. Because you deserve a father who fights to stay." Something in his words pierced through her anger. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't shifting blame. He was admitting what he had done and owning it. For the first time, she believed he might actually mean it. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can trust you yet." "You don't have to." "Not yet," he said quickly. "Let me earn it, one day at a time." Lily's tears spilled over. Slowly, cautiously, she wrapped her arms around him. His arms folded around her in return, hesitant at first, then firm, like a man clinging to the chance he thought he had lost forever. The hug lasted longer than either expected. When Lily finally pulled back, she saw his tears falling freely. It was strange, seeing her father vulnerable. For so long, he had been unreachable, lost in grief and addiction. Now he seemed smaller, human again. They sat together in one of the Academy's family rooms. The space was intentionally warm, with soft couches and gentle lighting. Miss Navarro lingered nearby but didn't intrude, letting Lily and her father shape the conversation. "I don't want to make promises I can't keep," her father said. "But I can promise this: I will never stop working to be better. For myself, for you, for the memory of your mom. She wouldn't want me to give up, and I won't." At the mention of her mother, Lily felt a sharp ache. She pulled a folded photo from her pocket, the one she always carried. It was worn from years of holding it close. She placed it on the table between them. "She would have wanted us together," Lily whispered. He reached out carefully, as though the photo were as fragile as his daughter's heart. "She believed in us. I failed her too. But if you let me, I want to honor her by being the father she hoped I'd be." Lily's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. Part of her already did, but fear remained, whispering warnings. She spoke honestly. "I love you, but I'm scared. Scared you'll disappear again. Scared I'll open my heart and you'll break it all over." Her father nodded slowly. "That's fair. I've given you every reason to doubt me, but you don't have to carry that fear alone anymore. Therapy is helping me, and it can help us together. We can rebuild, piece by piece." Later, during her own counseling session, Lily struggled to untangle the knot of emotions. She told Dr. Navarro he wasn't bad, he was sick, and sick people can get better. Saying it out loud loosened something inside her. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave it meaning. The following days were filled with cautious steps. Her father visited regularly, never missing a scheduled call, never breaking a plan. Each time, Lily felt her defenses lower a little more. It was not instant trust, but a fragile bridge forming. Keanu visited during one of these reunions, though he stayed outside in the courtyard, giving them privacy. From a distance, he watched Lily laugh quietly with her father over an old memory of her mom's cooking. He didn't need to intervene. His role was never to replace family, but to protect the chance for it to heal. As Lily walked her father to the door that evening, she whispered, "I'm glad you came back." He kissed the top of her head gently. "I'll keep coming back, as long as it takes." For the first time since her world had shattered, Lily dared to believe him, and in that belief, a new beginning took root. 1 year later, The hallways of Horizon Academy pulsed with life. What had once been a quiet refuge for 10 frightened children had grown into a vibrant home where trust and laughter were no longer rare. For Lily, the transformation felt almost unreal. She remembered her first days, clutching a photo of her mother, terrified of every shadow. Now, she stood taller, her voice steadier, though the scars inside her still whispered. It was during a group session when Dr. Navarro made the announcement. "Lily, you've been invited to speak at the National Youth Resilience Conference in Dallas. They want you to share your story." The words landed like a thunderclap. Lily's heart began to race. Her classmates turned toward her with wide eyes. Mia reached out and grabbed her hand immediately. "You have to do it," she said softly. "You're the reason we're all here." Lily shook her head quickly, panic rising in her chest. "I can't. I'm not someone people listen to." Boston leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "You held up that sign in front of thousands of strangers. That took more guts than most people will ever have. You can do this." Still, the thought of standing on a stage before hundreds of people made Lily feel like she couldn't breathe. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her dorm room, imagining the lights, the silence, the weight of so many eyes. The fear was overwhelming. In the weeks leading up to the conference, her classmates rallied around her. They helped her practice in the common room, acting as the audience. Every stumble, every forgotten line was met not with ridicule, but with encouragement. Mia reminded her, "Just tell the truth. People will listen to truth." Keanu visited the academy a few days before she was scheduled to leave. He found Lily sitting outside under the old oak tree, her notebook open on her lap, filled with crossed-out sentences. She looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "What if I freeze? What if I ruin everything?" He sat down beside her. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. When you held up that sign, you weren't thinking about speeches or applause. You were just telling the world you needed help. That honesty changed everything. Let it guide you again." His words settled deep into her heart. She knew he was right. It had never been about eloquence. It was about being seen, about giving voice to the millions of children who still felt invisible. When the day arrived, Lily stood backstage at the conference center, trembling. Through the curtain, she could hear the buzz of conversation, the shifting of hundreds of people waiting. She clutched her note cards so tightly they bent in her hands. Mia squeezed her shoulder. "You're not alone. We're all with you." The stage manager called her name. Her legs felt heavy, her throat dry. Yet, with each step toward the light, she reminded herself of Keanu's words. She didn't have to be perfect. She only had to be honest. The spotlight hit her eyes as she stepped onto the stage. The applause faded quickly, replaced by an expectant silence that pressed down on her like a weight. Lily walked to the microphone, her knees shaking, her breath shallow. For a moment, she almost turned back. But then she remembered the cardboard sign. The night she thought a doghouse was the best she could hope for. That memory anchored her feet. Her voice was small at first, almost a whisper. "1 year ago, I asked a stranger if I could sleep in his doghouse." A ripple went through the audience. She let the words hang in the air before continuing. "I asked for a doghouse because I thought that was all I deserved. My mom had died, my dad was gone, and the world kept telling me I didn't matter. I stopped believing I was worth anything more." The silence grew heavier, but this time, it didn't scare her. It felt like people were leaning closer, listening. She drew a breath, and her voice strengthened. "But I was wrong. Every child deserves more than scraps, more than shadows, more than being forgotten. Every child deserves safety, love, and a chance to dream." The words came easier now, flowing not from the note cards in her hands, but from her heart. She spoke of the Hendersons opening their home, of Mia's friendship, of the teachers who listened instead of scolded. She told them about the academy, how it was more than buildings, it was proof that invisible kids could be seen. "My sign asked for so little," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "But what I really needed was not a doghouse. I needed someone to believe I was worth more. And I was. We all are. She paused, her hands trembling, tears forming in her eyes. If you're out there right now feeling invisible, I want you to hear me. You matter. You are worth more than the world might tell you. Don't stop asking for help. Don't stop believing you deserve it. Because you do. A murmur of emotion swept across the room. People dabbed at their eyes. Some leaned forward in their seats, as if they could carry her words more closely. Lily closed with the line that had become her truth. I thought I deserved a doghouse. But I was wrong. I deserve a home. We all deserve a home. For 3 long seconds, the auditorium remained utterly still. Then, suddenly, the room erupted into thunderous applause. People stood to their feet, clapping and cheering. Lily saw strangers crying, nodding, holding one another. The noise was overwhelming, but in the best way. Backstage, Mia rushed to embrace her, whispering, "You did it. You spoke for all of us." Keanu stood a few steps behind, his eyes glistening. He didn't step forward, didn't make the moment about himself. He simply nodded, pride and quiet joy written across his face. That night, the recording of Lily's speech went viral. Within days, millions had watched her story. And everywhere children, who had once felt invisible, whispered her words to themselves, believing for the first time that they too deserved more. The morning after Lily's speech, Horizon Academy's phone lines nearly crashed from the sheer volume of calls. Emails poured in, donations arrived by the thousands, and messages of support filled every inbox. What began as a single voice trembling on a stage had transformed into a roar of compassion that stretched across the country. By the end of the week, more than $2 million had been pledged. Teachers, counselors, and volunteers offered their time. Communities that had never heard of Horizon Academy suddenly wanted to know how they could start their own programs. Local news stations replayed Lily's words every evening, while national outlets praised her courage. The ripple had begun, and there was no slowing it. At the academy, the children watched the growing response with wide eyes. For the first time, they saw proof that the world cared about them not just as statistics, but as human beings. Destiny held her head a little higher. Marcus began sketching even bolder murals. Boston spoke openly about his dream of college, no longer afraid it was impossible. The belief that had once flickered faintly in their hearts now burned brighter. New opportunities blossomed quickly. Within 6 months, Horizon Academy expanded its reach. 2 more campuses were launched, one in New Mexico and another in Oregon, each designed with the same philosophy. Small, home-like environments, where safety and healing came first. Keanu oversaw every detail, insisting that no dorm room feel sterile, no classroom cold. He wanted warmth stitched into the very walls. For Lily, the change was overwhelming. She had gone from begging for a doghouse to inspiring a movement, yet she tried to keep her feet on the ground. Each evening, after homework and dinner, she opened her laptop to read messages from children across the country. One read, "I was living in my mom's car, ready to give up. Your words made me ask my teacher for help. She got me into a safe home." Another said, "I thought nobody saw me, but when I saw you, I felt less invisible." Every message struck her deeply. She cried over many of them, sometimes with Mia by her side, sometimes alone under her blanket. She began saving them in a folder she labeled The Helpers, because to her, every child brave enough to reach out was part of the same chain her mother had told her about. It was during these long evenings of reflection that she found herself sketching designs in a notebook. Her mind turned to the robotics lessons she loved most at the academy. She began wondering, what if I could build something to help kids like me? Her pencil scratched across the paper, drawing a robot with a simple interface, one that could connect a homeless child to shelters, food banks, and counseling with just a few commands. It was a small idea, but it made her feel powerful, as though she could transform her pain into something tangible, something useful. One night, she whispered toward her mother's photo, "I think I found a way to be a helper, Mom. Not just to tell my story, but to give others a tool to survive. The robotics project quickly caught the attention of her teachers. Mr. Hassan, the science instructor, leaned over her sketches one afternoon and nodded with quiet pride. "This isn't just homework, Lily. This is vision. You're turning survival into innovation." His encouragement fueled her even more. Soon she was staying after class, testing code, piecing together sensors, and experimenting with designs made from donated parts. When Keanu stopped by and saw the project spread across the workbench, he smiled softly. "What's this?" Lily wiped grease from her hands, a little embarrassed. "It's just an idea. A robot that can help kids on the streets find resources. Maybe it's silly." He shook his head. "Not silly at all. You're solving a problem most adults overlook. That's what real change looks like." His words carried no grand speeches, only sincerity. To Lily, that meant everything. Meanwhile, the outside world kept responding. The video of her speech had passed 10 million views. Churches, schools, and community groups organized fundraisers. Cities reached out, asking how they could replicate the model of Horizon Academy. It no longer felt like a single campus. It was becoming a movement. Letters arrived from children who had once thought of ending their lives, but chose instead to speak up because of her story. Parents wrote to say they had learned to look closer at their own children's struggles. Counselors thanked her for giving their students courage. Every envelope, every email, was proof that her words had carried farther than she could have imagined. Lily kept returning to one particular memory, her mother's last words. Look for the helpers. She had found them in Keanu, in the Hendersons, in her classmates. But now, something had shifted. She was no longer only the one searching. She was becoming the helper her mother had told her to find. At night, she would scroll through the messages and answer as many as she could. Sometimes she wrote long replies, other times just a few words. "I see you. You matter. Don't give up." Each response felt like a thread woven into a growing web of connection, binding together people who once believed they were alone. The more she gave, the more her own heart healed. The nightmares came less often. The fear of being invisible no longer ruled her thoughts. Instead, she woke each morning with a purpose. She was not just surviving, she was building something larger than herself. On the anniversary of her first day at Horizon Academy, Keanu gathered the students in the lobby. He pointed to the glass case where her cardboard sign still rested. "This sign was the beginning," he said. "But the ripple it started keeps growing. And Lily, you've shown us all what it means to turn pain into purpose." Her classmates erupted in applause, cheering her name. Lily blushed, but smiled, realizing the truth. The doghouse she once begged for had become a foundation for a movement that would change lives. And for the first time, she felt certain of who she was. Not just a survivor, not just a voice. She was a helper. 2 years after Lily first held up her cardboard sign, Horizon Academy's courtyard was alive with celebration. Balloons floated gently above the crowd, music played softly, and rows of folding chairs filled the garden where the anniversary ceremony was about to begin. What had started with 10 students now had 50, each carrying a story of survival, each carrying hope they once thought was impossible. Lily, now 14, stood near the entrance in a simple blue dress, her hair tied back neatly. The transformation in her was unmistakable. She no longer looked like the weary child who had begged for a doghouse. She looked strong, healthy, and sure of herself. The light in her eyes told the story more than words ever could. She helped hang a banner that read, "Where Hope Begins." As she tied the last knot, Mia, taller now and more confident herself, laughed and said, "Remember when we were too scared to even talk at dinner?" Lily smiled. "Feels like a lifetime ago." One by one, the original students joined them. Boston, now preparing for college, handed out programs. Marcus carried art supplies for the younger kids who would perform a skit. Destiny, still struggling but fighting every day, clapped along with the music. Together they looked like a family forged through fire. The ceremony began with Dr. Navarro stepping to the podium. Her voice carried steady and warm as she told the story of Horizon Academy's beginning. She reminded the audience of the courage it took for 10 children to trust in an untested dream. She praised the staff, the donors, and the community who had made the expansion possible. But most of all, she honored the students, their resilience, and their voices. Then, she invited Lily to the stage. The crowd erupted in applause, and Lily's heart pounded as she stepped up. But this time, instead of trembling, she carried herself with calm strength. 2 years ago, I asked for a doghouse, she began, her voice clear. I thought that was all I deserved. Today, I stand before you as proof that every child deserves more than just survival. We deserve to thrive. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Lily lifted her hand, signaling she had more to share. Her eyes found her father in the front row. He stood straighter than she had ever seen him, his face filled with tears. After 2 years of steady sobriety, therapy, and unwavering effort, he was ready for the moment they had both been waiting for. Dr. Navarro stepped forward again and held up official documents. With the approval of the courts and child services, she announced, David Carter has had his full parental rights restored. Lily will live with him part-time while continuing her education here at Horizon Academy. Today, we celebrate not only our anniversary but the reunion of a family. The garden erupted in cheers. Lily's father stepped onto the stage, his hands trembling as he reached for her. Lily met her father at the center of the stage. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them. His arms wrapped around her, and she clung to him as if to make up for the years of absence and pain. Tears blurred her vision, but she whispered into his shoulder, You came back. His voice broke as he answered, I promised I would never disappear again. And this time, I'll keep that promise. The audience stood, clapping and cheering, many wiping their own tears. Cameras captured the embrace, but for Lily, it wasn't about the crowd. It was about the feeling of safety, of family, of belonging that she thought she had lost forever. When the noise quieted, her father pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. You're home now, Lily, and so am I. The words hit her like sunlight breaking through clouds. She nodded, smiling through her tears, because she finally believed it. Beside the stage, Keanu Reeves watched quietly. He didn't wave, didn't step into the spotlight, but Lily noticed him. His expression was calm, proud, and content to remain in the background. This wasn't his moment, it belonged to her, to the children, and to the family that had fought so hard to reunite. The rest of the ceremony unfolded like a celebration of resilience. Students shared poetry they had written about survival and healing. Mia and 2 others performed a short play about finding hope in unexpected places. Younger children sang a song that filled the courtyard with voices full of innocence and strength. When it was time to unveil the memorial, Lily and her father walked together to a plaque near the academy's entrance. It bore the name of Lily's late mother, in loving memory of Sarah Carter, who taught her daughter that kindness and courage could change the world. Beneath the plaque, inside a protective case, was the original cardboard sign. The words were faded now, but still legible. Mr. Reeves, can I sleep in your doghouse? Gasps rippled through the crowd. For Lily, it was like looking at another lifetime, another girl. She touched the glass gently and whispered, Thank you, to the version of herself who had been brave enough to hold it up. Her father squeezed her hand, his voice steady. That little girl saved us both. As the ceremony ended, families mingled, laughter echoed, and music played. Keanu stayed long enough to hug a few of the students and shake hands with teachers, then slipped away quietly, unnoticed by most. He left behind what mattered, a foundation strong enough to keep growing without him at the center. That night, as Lily sat with her father under the stars outside the academy, she whispered, I think Mom would be proud. Her father's arm wrapped around her shoulders. She'd be proud of both of us. And for the first time, Lily didn't just hope it felt true. The evening quieted after the celebration. Horizon Academy's courtyard, still glowing with lanterns and laughter, slowly emptied, until only the soft chirping of crickets remained. Lily sat at her desk in her dorm room, the same room that had once felt impossibly perfect. A lamp cast a warm circle of light on her journal, its pages filled with months of thoughts, drawings, and letters to her mother. She opened to a fresh page and placed her pen down. Her hand lingered, as if the weight of her journey rested on the tip of her pen. Then, slowly, she began to write. One act of courage changed everything. She paused, staring at the words. They felt simple, but behind them lived years of tears, hunger, fear, and resilience. That single moment of raising a cardboard sign in front of thousands had rippled out further than she could have ever imagined. She wrote about her mother, remembering the nights when she'd whispered, "Look for the helpers." She wrote about her father, who had found the strength to heal and fight for his family again. She wrote about the Hendersons, who had opened their doors without hesitation. She wrote about Mia, Boston, Destiny, and all the other kids who had turned Horizon Academy into a real family. Her pen slowed as she thought about Keanu. He had never tried to be the hero. He had never demanded the spotlight. He had simply seen her when she felt invisible, and in doing so, he had reminded her of her worth. That act had planted the seed for everything that followed. Lily closed her journal for a moment and glanced at the framed photograph on her nightstand. It showed the cardboard sign displayed at the Academy's entrance, sealed behind glass so it would never be forgotten. Beneath it, the inscription read, "Where it all began. Never forget your courage." She whispered softly into the quiet room. That little girl saved me, and she knew it was true. Her reflection wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about what came next. She thought about the messages she'd received from kids around the world, thanking her for giving them hope. She thought about the robotics project she was working on, designed to connect homeless youth to resources. She thought about the younger students who looked up to her now, their eyes full of questions and quiet admiration. The lanterns outside flickered as if echoing her thoughts. She picked up the pen again. Don't settle for a doghouse when you deserve a home. Don't stay invisible when you deserve to be seen. Don't give up when you deserve a chance. The words filled the page, steady and sure. She felt the truth of them in her bones. Lily set her pen down again, the page glowing under the lamp. Her words stared back at her, bold and unshakable. They weren't just reminders to herself anymore. They were messages to anyone who might be listening, to any child sitting in the dark wondering if tomorrow was worth facing. She rose from her chair and walked quietly through the dormitory halls. Horizon Academy was hushed now, the kind of silence that felt safe. When she reached the lobby, she stopped before the display that had changed everything, the original cardboard sign. There it was, preserved under glass, the letters still rough and uneven from her hurried writing. "Mr. Reeves, can I sleep in your doghouse? I have nowhere else to go." Her reflection glimmered faintly against the glass. The healthy 14-year-old she had become, staring back at the fragile 12-year-old who had once felt invisible. For a moment, it was like she was meeting her younger self, face to face. She placed her hand gently on the case and whispered, "Thank you for being brave." That sign, that plea born of desperation, had started a movement. It had built a home, a school, a family, and now it was inspiring hundreds of other children she had never met. She thought about one message she'd received just weeks earlier. "I'm in foster care, and I thought nobody cared about me. After hearing your story, I told my teacher what was happening at my foster home. She got me moved somewhere safe. You saved my life." Lily had cried reading that, not because she felt like a hero, but because she saw herself in that girl's words. She realized that the courage she had once borrowed from her mom's voice, from Keanu's compassion, had been passed on. Courage was contagious. She stepped back, wiping her eyes, and looked up at the Academy banner, fluttering faintly in the night breeze through the glass doors. "Where hope begins." Her voice was soft but steady as she spoke aloud, as if to the world beyond those doors. Don't settle for scraps of kindness when you deserve the fullness of love. Don't let the world convince you that you are invisible. You are seen, you matter, and your story is not over yet. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, filled with the echoes of her words, the lessons she had learned, and the lives she knew would be touched by them. Back in her room, she pulled the journal close and finished her final entry for the night. One act of courage changed everything. But it wasn't just mine. It was every act that came after Keanu refusing to let me be forgotten, Miss Navarro fighting for me, the Hendersons opening their home, my father choosing to heal. And now, maybe, it will be yours too. If you're lost, if you're scared, be brave enough to ask. Someone will see you. Someone will care. That's how change begins. She closed the journal, placed it neatly on the desk, and turned off the lamp. As she lay down beneath her blanket, a peace settled over her. The cardboard sign at the entrance wasn't just a relic of her past. It was a beacon for the future. And with that thought, Lily whispered the words that would echo through the hearts of everyone who heard her story. Always look for the helpers. And when you can, become one. Lily's journey reminds us that even the smallest act of courage can transform a life. Her story began with a sign asking for shelter, but it became a testament to hope, healing, and second chances. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever found a helper in your life, someone who stepped in when you needed them most? What does kindness mean to you? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be the encouragement someone else is waiting for. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue spreading hope through more incredible stories.